Today's discussion, if you may have seen the title, is about KH3 level design. More specifically, how good was KH3's level design? The reason I chose this topic was because over the last couple of years, I saw a humongous amount of people lauding KH3's level design, like talking about it, just glowing, absolutely glowing reviews. No one really had any uh, evidence or any argument for why the level design was good. They just kind of said it was good. And a lot of the time, it was also backed up by KH3's level design is better than KH2's level design, therefore it is good. So yeah, I wanted to kind of get into this one and actually like ask myself, like, is it actually good? Because I couldn't find any good arguments for the level design itself. People just said it was good and that was it. So I decided to actually like kind of dive into the topic myself a little bit more. So let's start with what KH3 did well, because there are things that KH3 did well when it comes to level design. I don't think it's all bad. I think they actually did some good things that are that should be noted. First thing is they provided big, open, spacious worlds. Huge emphasis on scale in comparison to previous installments. And I kind of think that's KH3's huge selling point, is they really, really wanted to sell you on the idea of scale, just big worlds without any transition points, obviously larger than the tiny little sandboxes that KH2 provided. Playgrounds or sandboxes to use Sora's wealth of movement options. I think this is a big deal, actually. When you're going for level design that has a lot of movement options, a huge thing that you want for your game is to match the movement abilities of your character to that of the environment. So KH3 Sora had so many different movement options, like the completely trumped all the previous games, right? It had flow motion in addition to wall running, air stepping across huge gaps of space. Sora was able to cover so much ground so quickly and so easily in KH3. In order to accommodate for that, they had to make each of the worlds extremely big and huge in scale, so that it felt like it was like a playground, like a sandbox, for Sora to just kind of like test these different movement abilities out as much as possible. They also did cool things in the sense that like you would get Sora would get double flight in Arendelle, and then the next area would be full of vertical movement, right? You would immediately be tested on how to use it by just being put in a sandbox that had a lot of vertical movement. And the return of some Easter eggs, very few, but they're still there, like in Olympus Coliseum, the forge area, right? You would fall down this little hole, and then all of a sudden you're in this forge room, and you do a little mini game, and you get a shield for Goofy. The Caribbean treasure islands, right? Like there's one island in particular in the Caribbean where if you go there and you dive into the very, very middle, there's literally like 12 chests in a single area, and it's like a bunch of adamantite, a bunch of Damascus. There's like 2 lucky emblems in there. Like it's this huge treasure trove that no one told you was there, but you just went out and you found it, and it was awesome. Oh yeah, the toy box minigame as well, or the toy box boxing game. That's another example where all just in the middle of this huge toy store, there's the little classic boxing game. And if you win the boxing game, then it reveals this little chest, and you open it. It's like a power boost, right? Just like little Easter eggs or little secrets hidden within a world can really, I don't know, it makes a big deal. It makes a huge impact. Do the Rapunzel interactions count? Yeah, I mean, you could say those kind of count. I'm not really sure if I would call those secrets, but you would like outside of the dancing minigame, you would like do a reaction command to dance on a box or something, and then the people would be like, oh yay, like this guy's awesome, and then they would, instead of being crowded around this chest, they would like leave to go see you, so then you could open the chest afterward, and that would have like a magic boost in it or something. It makes the world feel more interactable and interesting. Exactly. Like I think a big deal when it comes to level design is just you want the player to feel like they're actually interacting with the world in some sort of meaningful way. Oh, large amount of NPCs to make worlds feel more alive and lived in. Okay, so like I kind of forgot that I threw this in here. I'm not really sure if I would technically classify this as level design, but it is something that KH3 had over a lot of other previous KH games. There just weren't that many NPCs in previous KH games. Having a world feel like it's actually lived in, like in Twilight Town, there's all these people that are trying to go to the cuisine. There's the little movie area, right? There's a little real area that you can go to. Like it feels like there's actually a living, breathing world going on around you. It's not like the NPCs are really doing a lot for Sora, but just the fact that they're there and they make a world feel like it's alive and there's actually like a community somewhat, it goes a long way. Let's see, what KH3 level design lacked. And before I get into what KH3 lacked, I don't want to make it sound like KH3 level design was awful and I'm just here to trash on it. I'm just gonna stomp on KH3 level design and just kick it out the door. Like, I'm not here to do that. Like, I'm trying to give a fair analysis of what KH3 level design actually did, and it did some things well, and it did some other things not nearly as well, and I think it's important to bring those things up. KH3's levels rarely ever challenged the player or gave significant reason to use the game's movement tools effectively. So while KH3 had these really, really big, open, expansive worlds, my number one problem with them is that they don't actually ever challenge the player in any meaningful way. I think like the best example is that the chests were just kind of strewn about in a lot of KH3 worlds. They weren't really placed with any sort of intention, like they were like intentionally hiding them in really, really good spots or putting them behind certain puzzles that required the player to do some sort of, some sort of acrobat movement or some sort of movement puzzle. They were just kind of like put on top of buildings or just in certain areas or corners, just areas that were like begging for the player to just go up there and check them out. And there was no real resistance that made it difficult for the player to actually check out these areas. It was just a matter of how quickly it was going to take you to get there. The majority of KH1's levels challenged the player's ability to use Sora's movement abilities and progressively became more difficult. Let's talk about that second point where the worlds in KH1 became progressively more difficult, because I think that's a big thing. In the very beginning, like your intro level almost is Traverse Town, right? There weren't a lot of like pits or anything that like heavily punished Sora for doing any of this stuff. But it was definitely more of a challenge, and it got players a lot more familiar with Sora's movement abilities. And then like you fast forward to an area like Agrabah or Halloween Town or Hollow Bastion, and there are certain chests that are like placed across like pits that you have to jump across. If you don't make that jump, then you just fall into the pit and you have to climb all the way back up and you gotta do that jump again. By having some sort of challenge, some sort of difficulty, and some sort of punishment for not successfully platforming, it makes it a lot more meaningful, a lot more impactful. And so the players is being asked to do something a little bit more than just the basic, like, just jump on top of this, grab on this, like that sort of thing. This chest right here is like when you first see it in Traverse Town is just barely outside of Sora's reach, right? It's just barely within reach. So it either encourages the player to like really, really try and get like the max distance jump and try their best, or you can come up with a different strategy. Or you can come back with like a high jump or with glide or something, and it makes the process that much easier, right? Just by placing it barely out of reach, the player is going to remember exactly where that chest is, and they're going to be like, I'm coming back with a different growth ability, and I'm going to get this chest. There it is. Just like it's a tight ass jump. But then like I have this other part of the clip. This is another strategy that you can do. Like instead of trying to go for this perfect max distance jump, get on the second floor and drop down to get to the chest, right? Like there are different avenues, there are different ways to solve this puzzle and get to this chest, right? There are different ways to solve this problem. And that's kind of what KH1's level design just naturally invited the player to do. Even though Sora has superior movement ability in 3, chests and emblems are never difficult to obtain, just time consuming. Because there's no challenge within the levels for obtaining any of the chests, it's just a mindless process. Instead of being like this exploration process, it feels more like I'm checking off a checklist when it comes to looking for these chests, because none of them feel like they actually challenge me as a player, and they're just kind of they're just strewn about the world without any sort of care or meaning. I have another clip to kind of display this process. Wall running here. Yep, there it is. Right, so like I get to the spot and it's like, oh dude, it's awesome. There are like these 3 chests here. And while I would say like that is kind of like cool that there are 3 chests in one single area, what did I actually do to get to that spot? I did a little bit of wall running, and then I did a little bit of gliding, and then I did a couple air steps. And then I just got there, and it was over. There was no resistance to Sora getting to the spot. It was literally just a matter of how long it was going to take for me to get to this spot. There was no puzzle for me to solve. There was no difficult ledge that I needed to grab. It was just like, well, I just do a couple of things. Like, these are things that Sora learns within the first world, and it never expands on them in future worlds. It's literally just a matter of just doing it over and over and over again, but with chests and just in different locations and different worlds. Wouldn't it be fair to compare more Sora in Olympus rather than the second to last world? It's really not that different at all when it comes to the difference between Olympus and the difference between San Francisco when it comes to level design and chest placement is not very different. The only thing that's different when it comes to Olympus is that it restricts you more, where you're not able to glide, or you're not immediately able to wall run or air step in certain spots. That's like the only difference. And so in that way, it's a little bit more of like a streamlined process, and maybe certain chests are a little bit more meaningful to find them in certain locations. But it's really the design of where they are and how like the process of actually getting to those chests isn't that different. Is it a fair argument that KH1 was much smaller and chests had to be harder to get when KH3 is more of a treasure hunt and finding them is the challenge? I mean, you could say that. You could say that the challenge is just finding them in the first place. Some people might like this just, basic treasure hunting design that KH3 provides, as opposed to like the puzzle solving design of KH1. I think the point to hit on here is that it's really unfortunate that Sora in KH3 has all these amazing movement abilities, but nothing within the sandbox, within the levels of KH3 ever challenges him in any way. And it never gives him some sort of puzzle to solve, and never actually gets the player to think about his movement options in a different way or get really familiar with them or any way. It's just as basic as, well, we taught you everything that you need to know in the first world. That's just going to be all the worlds, and it's never going to get any harder, and it's just going to be the same thing, and the chests are never going to be like super placed in meaningful spots, except for like a couple of different situations. It's just going to be that, and that I think is the unfortunate thing. I haven't been phrasing it very well, but I think what I've been really trying to get at with that last slide is that it's really easy for the player to just go on autopilot when it comes to progressing through the worlds. Like, it's so easy to just like hold up and wall run, and then just like air step to this target, and then glide around and air slide in this direction. Like when you go through the process of actually exploring the world and checking where the chests are, it's just, you're going on autopilot. The other thing that KH3 really lacked was there pretty much were no puzzles or hidden Easter eggs outside of the ones already previously mentioned in KH3. And when it comes to puzzles and hidden Easter eggs, I think this is something that KH1 did so goddamn well. I wish I could just make a video just talking about KH1's level design, because it's absolutely fantastic for what it was doing for action RPGs back at the time. KH1 worlds constantly rewarded the player for interacting with the world using magic, movement abilities, and non-linear exploration. But yeah, just like the process of like figuring out that you can freeze bubbles and then jump on top of them and then jump on this particular ledge to find this chest, this dark matter. And what's even better is that there's this little grate right here, which I'm pretty sure you can get to, and you can look through the grate and see, wow, there's a chest right there. How do I get to it? I know it's somewhere in like the waterworks areas. I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna like, where is this chest? What's going on? And like the process of like having this ledge just being barely out of reach, but if you figure out that you can freeze this bubble, then you can jump on top of it and grab that ledge, and then you finally can see the chest right there and actually pick it up. Like it's one of my favorite bits of KH1, absolutely. Puzzles and Easter eggs require small enough spaces to contain these elements, and small spaces mean you can't use all your flash abilities and fight enemies. That's true. I think, yeah, because of like the limitation of just how small and compact it was, they had to rely on more like intimate means to engage the player with their levels. Like this image right here, like making items in Deep Jungle, right? Like you examine stuff in the camp area, and you find like this recipe. Like, this is a recipe to make an ether. Take this potion over here, and then you freeze it with Blizzard. It's like, okay, like you do this very specific process, and then like it does a little chime for you and everything, and it gives you an ether. Like, that's amazing. It's not even a chest. It's not even like something that's on a checklist. It's literally just this thing that you find within the world that makes perfect sense within the context of Deep Jungle, and you use it to turn your item into an even better item. Like, that's so cool. Just interacting with your own spells, with your own toolkit and the game environment, you're able to do this cool interaction. The postcards in Traverse Town is also another perfect example. Like, you find a postcard, and then you find the little mailbox, the drop-off area, and it's like, find 10 postcards. They're just strewn about Traverse Town. Go find them, have a good time. And you're like, oh, dude, this is going to be awesome. You do this little treasure hunt. You find like a couple of them, and you're like, oh, dude, this is awesome. And then like the process of finding like the last few is like really, really difficult. But just that process of that little challenge that the game poses you at the beginning of the world is like, it's just that thing that's going to stay with you for the entire playthrough. And you're going to be encouraged to just continue to find these postcards and get more and more cool stuff as you dump them off. It's awesome. Yeah, using Blizzaga to douse the fires outside the Olympus Coliseum lobby. Like, who would think of that? But it's still there. It's awesome. Oh yeah, the puzzles in Hollow Bastion. Oh my god, dude. The library puzzle, for instance. The only required stuff in the library is just you finding a couple of books, and then using those to open or move the bookcases out of the way so you can progress through the world. But if you go the extra mile and do the entire library puzzle, it opens this other door that leads to this other lift, and it takes you like 5 minutes, and you go all the way up the freaking castle, and you use gravity on this one chest, and you open it, and it's like this cool gummy thing. And then you look across the way, because it lets you do that, and you see on the other side there's this other chest that you can use gravity on. You're like, shoot, how do I get that one? I want to get that one. And as you go all the way up the entire Hollow Bastion castle, at the very, very top before you go in to fight Maleficent, there's the switch that you hit that changes the lift and has it go in a different direction. So the second visit that you go through, you go up that same exact lift all the way up for another 5 minutes, and you use gravity on that chest that you couldn't get to before, and it's Ramu's belt. It's like, dude, that's such a huge upgrade, and that's such a amazing process of going about getting that chest. It's like this first puzzle leads to this reward, which leads to incentivizing you to try and find a way to get to the second reward. And that process is this whole, it's like this other second puzzle that's connected to this whole, like, it's amazing. It's amazing how it connects all of these different things together. Yeah, the process, even if Rama's belt isn't even that good, the process of getting that chest is awesome. Like, for example, like the dark matter example that we just brought up, right? It's not like the dark matter itself is like this awesome thing. Like, it's a rare synth material, sure, but the process of getting that chest is something you will literally remember for the rest of your life, because you'll remember, oh my god, remember that time that I used Blizzard on this bubble, and then I grabbed the thing in the waterway, and I looked over, and there was that chest there, and it was that one chest that I couldn't find for like 10 hours. Like, you will remember that chest forever, regardless of whatever is in the chest in the first place. The last point, outside of the Forge Room in Olympus, the Treasure Trove in the Caribbean, and the boxing game in Toy Box, there was very little in terms of interaction between the player and worlds. There's a reason that they keep on calling back to that specific situation with the Forge Room. It's because it's this, I think people like that sort of thing. People like the sense of exploration and player agency. Like, they enjoy the fact that the game didn't even tell them that there was a forge, or there was an area there. It's this hidden little area that the player just, by themselves, they just kind of find it, and it's not required to beat the game or anything like that. It's just this cute, awesome little hidden secret that gets you this piece of armor for Goofy. And I think that it means a lot when there's so many people that refer to that particular instance in the game, and they're just like, man, I love that. I really, really wish that there were more things like that in the game. Yeah, there's this reward, there's this payoff for exploration, exactly. And KH3 could have done more of that. And it's really, really unfortunate that they didn't, because there were only like a couple of moments where they did. And outside of that, the majority of worlds were, like we mentioned earlier, just these big open worlds that felt empty. And there were just chests just, thrown in really basic locations that were just, that never challenged the player or never really rewarded the player all that much. And that brings me to the last point, actually. The times where KH3 did have branching paths and nonlinear exploration usually had very disappointing rewards. Guys, how many times did you go down a branching path in KH3 and you found a big chest only for you to open that big chest and it was a classic Mickey game, classic Mickey phone game that didn't give you anything? And if you did all of them, if you did all of them, your reward for doing all the classic Mickey games was a copy blade. It's literally just Hyper Hammer, but it's just, but it's different. It has different stats and like a different shot lock. And that's it. Say what you will about KH2 with big chests only giving maps. Man, KH3 really, really made it feel so bad to find a big chest, because like 80% of them were just these Mickey games that you really, really did not want to find. The last point that I'm going to bring up is, when it comes to KH3 level design, isn't it the same as Dream Drop Distance? Is that a hot take? Because I'm not really sure if it is. Like let's go down the list here. Let's go down the list of KH, or what is it, of Dream Drop Distance level design. Extremely large, wide open rooms. Check. They both have that. Playground for flow motion usage for the most part. Check. Same. I would make the argument that 3D actually had better puzzles and better rewards than in KH3 for exploring and experimenting with your flow motion. Most chests are placed in locations that are dying to be found. Yeah, Dream Drop did a lot of that. Dream Drop had the same exact issue where it introduced you to this awesome movement ability, flow motion, where it felt awesome to move around the worlds. Like, it felt so fast, and like it was this cool skill that you were developing. But all of the chests in Dream Drop were just in spots that were dying to be found. I'll put it on top of this house, or I'll put it at the top of this clock tower or something like that you have to flow-mo wall run up. Like it's kind of the same thing. I see way more people talking about KH3's level design as like this awesome thing, as this amazing, groundbreaking thing. And I see nobody, very, very few people talking about Dream Drop Distance level design as like a good thing. And yet when you analyze them and you compare them, they're extremely similar, almost the exact same, sharing the same exact strengths and the same exact flaws. But people prefer one over the other. They prefer KH3 over Dream Drop. Why is that? I don't know. Because Dream Drop Distance is seen as a side game that folks don't care about, while KH3 is the main installment. Ah, I see. That could be it. That could be a reason. Like, maybe people didn't even play Dream Drop Distance, and then they played KH3, and they were like, oh, dude, KH3 is so awesome. Look at the level design. It's like, man, they actually kind of did that in a previous game that you may not have played. Yeah, I guess you could say that KH3 definitely has, like, scale and presentation whereas Dream Drop Distance doesn't necessarily have either of those things, so... Flow motion is really unique movement system that gets you all excited. Then you find out the level design doesn't use it all. KH3 says you can run up any wall, and then at least there are things to find at the top of those walls. Yeah, KH3 at least has some sort of complementary design, even though it feels very empty or doesn't feel like it really challenges the player. I could see that. I could definitely see that. Pirates of the Caribbean ship world has beautiful islands, but besides that, there was only water, 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 island, water, water. The main campaign of Pirates of the Caribbean was atrocious. It was awful. I hated every single moment of it. However, when you actually want to go through the process of checking all the other islands and just kind of go on this little adventure just to see what treasure might be found on each of those islands, it actually felt more like an adventure. And I think the reason for that is because it forces you to use the ship to get to each island. Instead of using the extremely autopilot, easy to use movement abilities that KH3 provides for you, using the ship and using the map and those two elements together to kind of like explore and be like, oh man, I'm going to go to this island and then check this island out. And then once you get to those islands, you search around and you're like, oh dude, check out all these like it feels a lot more meaningful when you actually are forced to use the ship to get to those islands in the first place. So it's a lot more of an engaging process where it's like, okay, I'm going to use the ship and I'm going to use my compass and I'm going to fight off these other ships and then land, and then I'm going to get off the ship, and then I'm going to scour the island and see if there's any goodies in here. And oh man, this one island has like all these goodies. Like that process I think is a lot more engaging for the player than just wall running, flow motion, air step, air slide, glide everywhere to just find all my stuff. The question at the start was, how good was KH3's level design? I would say like it's definitely better than KH2's level design, which I think the majority of us are just like, yeah, that wasn't very good. It's definitely better than KH2's level design. It's better than the majority of levels, or the majority of installments in the franchise. But I think it still could be better. I think it honestly still could be better. There's still a lot that KH3 could have brought to the table that I was pretty disappointed with when it came to level design. Because to me, it felt extremely empty. Whenever I think about KH3 level design, all I think about is San Francisco. All I think about is just wall running up buildings and then gliding around aimlessly and then air stepping to like one area. And just doing that over and over again, just checking every single building until I found everything. And it was just such a mindless, boring process. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a level for improvement, but I do think it was good. I think that it was all right.